Hi, folks. We're Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the grift and the scam. Well, that's the greater issues around climate change and so on. But it's gone into new territory here, where Australia is issuing to the Pacific Islanders. That are thousands of miles off the coast of Australia, by the way, but issuing visas to the Pacific that are special climate visas. A climate visa. Have you heard of a climate visa before? Well, it goes like this. This is the grift, that the Pacific Islands are disappearing under the rising sea levels. The rising sea levels are caused by climate change. Climate change has been caused by straight white men. So the white countries, the rich white countries run by straight white men, or hitherto at least, have to give, they're morally obligated to give special visas to these Pacific Islanders to escape these islands just disappearing under the waves. So whenever, and there's a bunch came recently, whenever Pacific Islanders come to Australia, this is heralded by the leftist propaganda media as being some huge accomplishment. Not only is evil white fascist Nazi bigot swastika waving white man atoning for his eternal wickedness, that people with limited social power, they're brown people and so on, they are being brought to the white West. And this then rescues them, and again, even yet more atonement for evil white man's evil deeds. Now, in order to sort of gin this up, they're saying, well, are these Pacific Islanders? And I should sort of add that every Pacific Island, there are varying degrees on the spectrum here, but every Pacific Island is a failed state. They're either living in more or less the Stone Age, and that everything they have or everything they need to kind of get by is supplied by the West anyway. So that the aid that they get, and the different forms of aid, whether it's food, whether it's technology, whether it's whatever it is, everything is supplied pretty much by the West. These places have no manufacturing other than sort of entry-level carpentry or something like that. But they have no manufacturing or anything at all, and their everything again is supplied by the West, including very substantial aid. So every one of these places is a failed state. It's very lucky that, or very unlikely that, any children there will get more than 2 or 3 years of primary school education. The richer families there will send their children, for example, to Australia or New Zealand to finish their high school and maybe go to university as well. But even that's something of a rarity, and very much caught up in affirmative action that, well, these people are brown, they come from poor society, Stone Age type society, so why don't we just give them the PhD and smile sweetly at them while we do it. So there again, they're just a bunch of failed states with people living in near Stone Age conditions. So they don't fit in too well when they come to Australia or to any first world country for that matter. Now, some of these places, like the Solomon Islands as a case in point, they frequently break out into tribal civil war where people run around with machetes hacking each other to pieces. And when they come to a first world country such as Australia, the machete type behavior is, they bring that with them. So this is the Pacific Island. Now, when I looked for photos or pictures or images I could use for this video of Pacific Islanders, all I got were these stunningly beautiful, slim, very fit-looking island women, or these super buff-looking men, Pacific Islanders. Constant reference to that actor and former wrestler, The Rock, or Dwayne, or whatever he's called, that he comes from, I think, American Samoa or something like that. But the reality is that these are proper photographs, and certainly all the ones I've met, many of them are incredibly obese, and are very much still behaving like third world peasants and so on. Now, they come from a society where village elders and chieftains and tribal chieftains control everything, and the way people are kept under control isn't by a police force or isn't by independent courts or anything like that, or a body politic or something. The control is kept over people by the use of the wider family. Even third and fourth cousins are family. And so if you displease the family or the chieftains and so on, then you're outcast. Nobody will talk to you. No, you're not able to. No one's house is open to you. No food will be shared with you. And given they live in communal societies, again, Stone Age societies, pretty much everything is shared. They don't have private property in the sense that we do in Australia or a first world country. So these people are still very, very tribal in that sense. And because of where they live and those islands in the equator, they've got good rainfall and all this sort of stuff. There's things to eat all year round. A lot of fish, a lot of fruit, and I don't know, coconuts and bananas and goodness knows what. So they don't have any seasonal need to prepare for a difficult winter, these sorts of things. So that they can eat all year round. So they've become like children. Everything's sort of provided for them. It's there, and they've got a very childlike mentality when it comes to responsibility or personal accountability. So when they come to a first world country, again, like in Australia, they the idea that there would be independent police and independent courts and all these sort of things is something these people don't understand. They know that authority, legitimate authority, comes from the wider family and the tribal chieftain. You can't displease the family, otherwise you'll be outcast. Your punishment is to be outcast. It's not to be put in prison. It's not to have some guy you don't even know finger wagging you saying you've broken the law, you're going to prison or you're going to be fined or this or that. That's not even something that they can't even comprehend, that social structure. So they only come to the rich white country to, in the case of the men, to get their hands on the the hot blonde chicks that they see online, or to loot the place. That's it. So whenever you see a tranche of or a bunch of which is again lauded and celebrated in the globalist controlled propaganda media, they point out how all these people are coming along, and they'll try and gin it up as a wonderful thing that they're all engineers or rocket scientists, or they've all got multiple PhDs, and they'll even have a carve out for there's a lesbian there's a brown lesbian. So they got this 300-pound brown lesbian coming to Australia, and this is touted as some great thing. Architecture is also a great one. The globalist propaganda media love doing this with brown and black people, that so and so wants to be an architect or is studying to be an architect, which is bullshit. These are people that dropped out of high school at 12 years old. Now, you wouldn't expect there to be in these Pacific Islands a large infrastructure of first-class high schools, universities, or anything like that. A lot of these people do distance learning now from the Pacific Islands, where the amount of degrees that are handed out for the population is quite extraordinary. Clearly, they're being given affirmative action degrees. But once they've got these degrees, they then wave them around and say, oh, I want to come to Australia now, or a first world country. Look at me, I've got a degree. But in fact, you're talking to somebody who's got the education and mentality of a 10-year-old. And personal responsibility and responsibility within a sort of a Stone Age community are two very different things. And once these people lose the wider sort of discipline of the family unit, that wider tribal family unit, they're lost. They just don't know what to do, and they perceive the police and the courts in the West, well, you're not legitimate authority. You can't tell me what to do. And as you can imagine, that creates all sorts of problems. Similarly, they procreate at a very young age. So there are Pacific Islanders who, they'll procreate at, he's 14 and she's 13, and they've procreated. And so, by age 29, he's a grandfather and these sorts of things. And so this, it's a very different scenario and a very different sort of lifestyle and so on. But anyway, they've been given these climate visas. Now, it's hotly contested as to whether or not any of these islands are actually going, whether the sea levels are actually rising and if they're affecting any of these islands. So there's a handful of islands where, due to erosion, they're losing some of their coastline areas. And so there's a claim that this is equivalent to the sea level rising. The sea level has not risen, so they're using erosion, parts of an island, say in an island group where there are 10 islands, one of the islands is suffering some sort of sand or coastal erosion due to maybe the storms and whatnot that are going on, have done for the. So, but this is being attributed to climate change, and they're using a blanket thing that if one island is suffering erosion, then every island is suffering, which is just not true. So something like 70% of the islands in the Pacific, they're actually the actual land area has increased. 25% have remained stable, and 5% have been have had reduced area, but only by small amounts, and again due to erosion. So this whole idea of a climate visa is just a bullshit grift. But nonetheless, it's being touted as being some great morally virtuous accomplishment thing and bandied around. But it's just another excuse to bring brown third world people into the first world, and the problems they bring with them in terms of behavioural problems then become the first world's issue to solve. And a lot of these people go on, to be welfare dependent all their lives, and also to, become career criminals. So I don't know what is exactly being accomplished. The idea would be, I think, to help them have successful societies in the island places that they come from. Why not put effort into that? But that doesn't seem to be something. And to be fair, it's actually been tried and hasn't really worked out so well. The Solomon Islands has been subject to European, colonial influence for a long time now. Yet the tribes and the groups there still run around with machetes hacking each other. So clearly there's and they have access to Western courts and things like that. But that's not how they perceive social structures. And in absence of completely reinventing their social structures in those places, I don't see there's going to be any change. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.